So, welcome back to the Renewables podcast. Before we get into the conversation today, we just want to touch on some products from our sponsors at Proteus. And I'm going to start, Sam, with this SPD that they've got. Now, with these, you can mount them straight onto the buzz bar. You don't need to have an overcurrent protected device for them, which is super handy when we're limited for space. And we're trying to combine a smaller renewables board maybe with some EPS circuits. There's a lot of uses for these. They're absolutely fantastic. We've been using them for a good few months now, not that long out on the market. So yeah, absolutely fantastic that Proteus are looking after us as installers. And you've got another range of products over there.
I have, yeah. I've got the coloured Henley blocks, or 100 amp link blocks as some people call them. And gone are the days. I'm a bad contractor for using the black ones for so long, the Bakelite ones, because you try and knock one of these top knockouts out and it basically shatters the full thing. And I'm guilty enough to say that I didn't know these existed. So we started using these now, and they're absolutely fantastic. Solid. You've got the little blanks in here as well. So if you don't use one of the terminals, you can blank it off or just slide it out when you do need to use it. They're fantastic, and obviously they're all coloured as well, so that you know exactly the phase colour and the colour of the cable or the phase that's going into it. So yeah,
even the
pieces.
functional earth, or the Cranis collection as it is called, in pink. And they work with the 3mm Allen keys, which is consistent through the range of the mains tails isolators as well. So they've got us at heart, I think, as installers. You're not messing around with different screws and heads. Another fantastic range of equipment to tie in with the bi-directional RCBOs, which is obviously the leading product Proteus have got at the minute. And they've had that for a long time, which is really helping us again as renewables installers. And that's one of the reasons that we're so happy to be working with Proteus on this show. But without any further ado, let's get back to the chat.
There we go, yeah. So we are live. There's people in already. Fantastic.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Getting a few people joining in there.
Let a few people come in. But yeah, thank you very much, everyone that's joined already. This is a bit of an experiment, isn't it, Matt, this one?
It is. We've not tried, I mean, if you can't tell, we haven't tried this before. It's like a bit of a last minute idea we had. We come out on Sunday, we said we'd try. We've been talking about it a bit, haven't we? But made plan to do it properly on Sunday. Yeah. And here we are.
Yeah.
On Monday.
Yeah. It's one of them, isn't it, where we've just got to try new things, and if it doesn't work, then we'll never do it again. But if it does, then awesome. So we're going live on each of those accounts, and this will be cut into the podcast. So yeah, if you didn't see this live, you'll be watching this on the podcast. And we're going to hopefully take a lot of questions from everybody that is in this live, as well as some that have been sent in on. Well, you've got some from Twitter, haven't you, Mark?
Yep. I've
got some from Instagram. You've got some from Instagram, and so even though we're not saying about questions now, just start firing them in, and we'll come back to them. So any questions based on basically anything, isn't that really?
It is. I mean, we'd said around the show itself, but anything at all to do with business or anything that you've seen around the socials and other bits and stuff that's kicking off, if you've got a question on it, drop it in and we will do our best to answer. Sam's winning on the live count at the minute, so I assume everyone's just seen him and gone over there.
Not a numbers game, Mark.
He's the popular kid in town.
It's not a numbers game. So yeah, but no, thank you everyone. So should we kick off with a few questions that have been sent in?
Yeah. Do you want to start with yours?
Yeah, can do. So Camille sent 4 in actually, so thanks Camille. So I'll read this one first. So pros and cons of panels being mounted on rails or being incorporated into the roof. So basically an in-roof or an on-roof system. So my first thought about this is it is very individual onto every project, but obviously the massive pros on in-roof for me is aesthetics and reducing of that tiling cost, just it looking better and it forming part of the roof. Works a lot better on a darker tile, I've found, like a slate or a dark flat concrete, something like that, where you haven't got a lot of dish in the panel in the tiles. But yeah, it looks really good. But what about you for?
We've only done on roofs so far. We've had a couple of inquiries for in roof, but we've not been successful in those proposals. Do you find generally in roofs more expensive as a system?
Yeah, it definitely is, because there's more parts to it. You've got all the flashings. It's got more work to do really. It's your roof seal, so it's what you're using to seal that roof. It's not just sitting on top of the rails and panels. But I think one of the cons of in roof for me is that you need more surface area to put an in-roof system in, because you've got to allow that space for the flashings around it, so you can't go as tight to like the ridges and everything else. So it does make it a little bit. Sometimes it can limit how much kilowatt peak you can fit on the roof. But yeah, it's pros of it, probably aesthetics and it's saving you money on the tiling side. Cons. It takes up more space, and sometimes, depending on the panel or the system you're using, you won't be able to fit as much kilowatt peak on that roof. But you've got to just play around with the aesthetics really, and see what the customer wants.
Nice. I've had a few questions come through on mine, but I've got one for you actually about the in-roof thing. Is there any like extra fire provision you have to make, because obviously you've moved your fire
it's an awesome question. Yeah, so you have to really check this. So a lot of people fit the GSE system, which is a good system, but you need to check that. I believe on the GSE website, or you can get in touch with GSE. There's they've fire tested certain panels with certain pods, so you can't just fit any old panel into any old pod. You need to make sure that they do work. And anyone that doesn't know about the GSE system, it's basically like a plastic tray that goes on the roof that provides all the gutters, and then there's certain fixing points on that tray where you can clamp the panel to it. We use a lot of the Viridian stuff, which is an all metal system, and it has its own panel. So it means that it's all been fire tested, if you like, in-house. But there's loads of other systems out there. But yeah, I have seen where sometimes people have had to put an extra like fire barrier either on the felt or over the lats. I can't remember where they put it, but we've not had that problem because we tend to double check those things.
Yeah. So it's always something I wondered.
Yeah.
I've had a question come in from Arthur Anderson, and it's not about renewables, but it's about apprenticeships. And there is loads of podcasts on the Apprentice 1-to-1 channel about that. But best tips are to go through the NIC and NAPIT CPS register list, see your local contractors, send emails, get on the phone, ask them if they've got any job roles, get into your electrical wholesalers, drop a CV on the counter. They often know who is looking. On the socials, have a look around, get involved in conversations with contractors as well. And don't forget the traditional job boards, because you never know what is coming up. It's really, really difficult out there at the minute for apprenticeships. So it's not easy, but perseverance, and you will get there, I'm sure.
Just give us a thumbs up if you can hear us, because one person said any lip readers. So make sure that you can hear us.
Oh, my nightmare.
Oh, that would have been a nightmare, wouldn't it? But I think we would have been told by now. Let's have a look at the bottom. Yeah. If you can't hear us, then the podcast will be out soon. And hopefully we've got all of our audio stuff working. But let us know if you can or can't hear us, but hopefully that's all good. I was
going to say, Triple Solus said skip cost for taking your tiles away on in-roof as well. So obviously if you're stripping tiles off.
Yeah, so it depends. That's why I say right at the start, it depends on what that project is about. I don't think we've ever done one where the house has already got tiles on and they need to be stripped off. It's always been like a renovation or during a new build or something like that. So it's always been kind of in the process of the building work, and that's where it is really beneficial, because they're saving on the tiles. But yeah, I have seen, especially on Instagram, quite a few people do it when the roof is tiled, and therefore you have to get rid of the tiles.
That must mean Triple Solar can hear us as well, so that's good.
Brilliant. Yeah, exactly. So at least one person can. Right, so I had another one come in just here. Do you know a good rail system that can be fixed to a high wind area flat roof? For me, whenever there's anything bespoke, have a chat to Sun Fixings. They do some wild and wonderful things. So we've been chatting to them about a EPDM flat roof where the roof isn't strong enough to hold a ballasted system. And yeah, Sun Fixings are the one for the kind of unique. I feel sorry for them a little bit, because they only ever get like, well, they don't only ever get, but I assume they get like the worst installations like across the country, because everyone knows that they do like bespoke stuff, and so they have to really think outside the box. But have a chat to Sun Fixings. If it's a high wind area, it's probably not going to be ballasted, because the roof is going to be a nightmare to like structurally, unless they've planned for it all. But yeah, probably a fixed down system, a screwed down system. But yeah, have a chat to Sun Fixings. That's what my advice would be.
Yeah, I'm not a big expert on that, to be fair. The only ones we've ever really worked with is Renewables and Vandervalk. So I've not got much experience to offer beyond that. But on my own shed, which was a flat roof, and I did screw through the EDPM with that. I used Van der Valk roof hangers because I knew where all the timbers were. I was happy to take the chance on screwing through it, and it's held tight and sound, and it is pretty windy out there. So.
Yeah, that's it. And Van der Valk, for anyone that uses Van der Valk, we noticed today, or I think it's last week maybe, they released a new design tool which allows you to do your CC2 and CC3, I think, do those two calculations with like where you have different heights of buildings and stuff. So yeah, that's a lot better than having to send it off to them and for them to do that. So that's a good little addition that they've added.
I'm hoping that Damo shared the episode we recorded with him, and I haven't released it without realising, because John Wood Heating said it was a good watch. So
all right, a little bonus episode. Yeah,
he's seen it.
I assume he's yeah, he's probably shared it. Fingers crossed too, just privately. Right, let's have a look. Have you got another one, Mark? I've got another one here. But
no, there's nothing. No other questions come through as
That's
yet.
Fine.
Mine.
I'll drop. So anyone that's just joined, it's just a free for all. Just drop your questions in, and we'll come down to them. So ECA boiler. Solar panels degrade over time, reducing their efficiency. What are the main causes of this degradation, and what advancements are being made to prolong the lifespan of the solar cells? Yeah, it's a good question. So, like with a lot of things, it's really weather. Weather, and with it being it's a silicon-based product as well, so just through its working life, there you go, Moonpig popping up. I knew there was going to be some things coming on. Through its working life, like any machine really, is going to become less efficient, and the warranties actually have a sliding scale, don't they, Mark, over 25, 30 years, whatever the panel is. And with panels, you get two sets of warranty. You get a product warranty, which is really like the frame and like connections on the panel, and then you get the like the production amount, like the efficiency of the panel. What's your output going to be? And that is usually a sliding scale down. So it's always interesting looking at the panels. Some may say like 25-year. You might be looking at two 25-year warranted panels over the performance, but one is 25 years at 80%, the other one's at like 90%. But yeah, not usually that high, but you know what I mean? They can be different between the two panels. They both have a 25-year warranty, but that 25 is going to be warranted to a different amount, so it's worth having a look. And like with the question there about what improvements have been made, advancements, I'm not sure, to be honest, is the honest answer. I mentioned that we wouldn't have all the answers, but yeah, I think it's just quality of products, really.
Yeah, is that in terms of the panel technology? I suppose it'll be thinner, stronger glasses, I suppose, on the frames. The bifacial aspect has been an innovation in solar panels, hasn't it, where we've seen some of that, and levels of optimization as well now coming built into certain brands of panels. And also weight, actually. I saw one, I can't remember the name of the manufacturer now, but it was a 550 watt panel, and it weighs 9 kilograms. It's got like a polycarb top rather than glass. So I was showing Mike actually from East Renewables how that stands up to the longevity of time. Who knows? But they give a 25-year performance guarantee on it again. Right. But typical panels, 22 kilos ish? So
yeah, around that. Yeah,
third of the weight.
I feel about 4 times that after the 20th one.
Exactly. So I was well up for that until I saw the price. They were like 150 quid a pop. So
yeah,
best pair of muscles
maybe
instead.
No, that's a good one. Right, let's have a look. See if any others. We've got we can hear you, so that's good.
The Triple Solar said HJT has the worst degradation. ICO 445 panels are the 8.9 kilogram ones. Has aviation plastic glass in it. So it's not just polycarb. I was giving off vibes of like a plastic conservatory or shed roof, but it's,
you were mis-selling them there.
Yeah, it's something a bit more advanced than that with the sounds of it. But yeah, it's the price of them, I think. The weight savings, if you've got a structure, I'm thinking like maybe a garage or a shed or something where you don't want to load it up with a full array, that's got to be a useful option in the armoury, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And we see so many times like these panels going in a flat roof system on like a dormer or something like that, and you know those timbers are only like 70 mil or something, or like 50 mil or something like that, and you're just like, oh, don't know how they're going to hold up. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see if the weight does come down. But yeah, we'll see what's happening on that. So another question here, and then we'll maybe do one of our ones that people have sent in. Any advice for getting some basic knowledge on solar? So when we turn up to a property that already has it, installed, so we know what we're looking at, etc. Maybe YouTube. There's some good YouTubers out there.
I was going to say there's YouTube, but manufacturers as well, like Solar Edge. They have a great academy tool that anyone can get access to go through training, and other brands have that as well. So
yeah, I suppose it depends what you're doing with that. It depends what you're doing with that solar as well. If you're doing like a board change or an ICR, what level of knowledge, or if you're doing like an inverter replacement where you've got to know maybe a bit more on the MPPT kind of sizing and how what sort of inverter you would need to change that to. But it's not that hard. Don't worry. I think a lot of the time people think it's a lot more complicated than what it is. But yeah, definitely have a look on YouTube and have a look at some of the manufacturer stuff like Mark said would be my advice. And also there's some really good guidance notes out there for solar and battery now as well, showing how the circuit should be constructed, where the isolators should go, and things. But manuals for RCD protection as well, if it needs it, if it's got one inbuilt and all of that. So
there's a good book from Napier that I saw it at the installer show actually, for like guidance to PV. I think it's along the line of code breakers and their on-site solutions. So stuff like that. It's like, I think it's about 25 quid.
25 quid, yeah. We were chatting about it. Yeah. No, that's a good one, because usually like 70 odd quid for like other books in industry, isn't it? So it's a decent price really. Right, do you want to do one of your ones?
Can do. We've had one from Dave Martini, who is from Calidus Wholesalers. He said, do you review the manufacturer's work policy practices with reference to human rights abuses, or do you take the lead from a wholesale distributor you've bought the products from? Do you think most installers don't give a monkey's where it comes from?
It's a fair comment, and the honest answer is that for me is that I deal with certain wholesalers, and I kind of I kind of put that onus on them really for the supply chain. I believe it was Trina or one of the others had brought out a policy on like the slavery side of things. But yeah, it's an important point that probably I would say towards the latter end of that, being brutally honest, that most installers probably won't. And don't give a monkeys is maybe a bit strong, but there's so many other things, and I think trust is placed on the wholesalers to sell reputable brands. Would you say that's fair?
I think so. There's got to be, we're not purchasers, are we, in terms of where this is actually coming from, other than for wholesaler shelves. Maybe we need to be more aware of it as installers. I've got to say, since we started working with Waxman after Sarah came on the podcast, she signed me straight up as a customer. So
yeah, she knows what she's doing, Sarah.
To be fair, they've sent stuff through about the ethical resourcing of their materials and some of the solar panels and stuff, and really emphasising that to us. And I don't think any of the other wholesalers we've used have done that.
No, Waxman are good at that sort of stuff. Yeah, that's what you get with like the I don't want to say smaller, because they're still like a big distributor, but I know the team at Waxman, who I've dealt with for a long time, they're just like they're different to the rest of them. It's more of like a family vibe there. So yeah, if you don't use Waxman, then definitely drop Sarah a message on LinkedIn or what have you. But it's a great question, Dave. Thanks for sending that one in.
And Somerset Farmhouse has just said, how awful was Damo? So Damo's got his fan club in tonight.
Has he shared that? Has he shared it with Somerset Farmhouse as well?
I don't know.
We'll get like 3 people watching it when it comes out.
So that's a good point from Triple Solar. The T-shirt you're wearing is made in China. So it's like, how far do you take it? It's a good point, because a lot of the clothes we do wear probably is coming from similar circumstances, isn't it? That's the realities of the world we live in.
Yeah, I think, and also, how much can you trust these documents? It's like, and is there, that company might not have any modern slavery kind of happening in that company, but do they outsource something that then kind of gets around that document? It's an absolute nightmare to try and deal with, really, being brutally honest.
Yeah, that's kind of what you said. It's hard to trace, but needs to be ethical. There's a question from the Pawson Gas on Twitter, who said, what renewable technologies can you see drying up in the future? Which ones are going to keep growing? EV chargers, heat pumps, PV, batteries. It's the great unknown, isn't it?
Yeah, I take a slightly different view on it. I don't think necessarily it'll dry up, because it's all very futuristic stuff. I think it's more like how much mainstream will it become? I've said it on podcasts before. I don't think renewables, which is a proper stabbing me on back, but I don't think renewables will be an incredibly specialist area going forward over the next 10 years. I think it'll be, we do rewires, EV chargers, solar and battery, and testing. And there'll be some specialist companies, hopefully like ourselves, out there, but I think it'll hit more mainstream. So I think it will become not as scary, especially as the technology develops and it becomes easier and easier to install this stuff, like the whole EV charger with earth rods and everything when it first came out. And now you basically just put in a 32 amp or 40 amp radial in, and everything's dealt with by the charger.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's some of the technology we're already seeing, like hydrogen, when that first came on the scene, that was the big buzzword, wasn't it? And now that seems to have shifted more to the world to shipping and like large transport away from vehicles on the road.
Yeah.
So I think there is like moves there. Whether we'll see that with heat pumps. Obviously in the UK we've got really weird housing stock, haven't we? With like blocks of flats and terraced housing, and some of these technologies just don't work in those places as they would in Scandinavia. That's often used as the big example of what can be achieved.
Yeah, I think things will, like exactly what you're saying there is like everything will find its home, like its slot. So, you know, heat pumps have been pushed massively, and we had a really good chat with Demo, was it Friday, which is coming out next week and the week after. So that'll be interesting. But, you know, there's a lot on there that he said that makes heat pumps kind of pretty good for most properties. But yeah, we'll see. I think things will find their home. And like hydrogen, you know, I think up in Redcar, they were thinking of having the first hydrogen village, but basically everyone kicked off and said, we're not having hydrogen. We're not being like the testers for this. So they objected and it didn't happen. So yeah, we'll see.
It's the big unknown. I mean, triple solar, I'm assuming it's rocky, but it could be Yogi has said hydrogen's coming in 2-3 years, seen a hydrogen inverter and batteries in prototype. Daikin got something in the pipeline as well. So.
Where the heck is Paz going to say we have to fit that? Like, in a field like a mile away. But yeah, let's see. Right. So,
Give Energy opinions.
Give Energy
I'm a massive
opinions.
Give Energy fan. You're not an installer, are you? We're yet to convert, Sam.
No.
We will do in the end, but he's not converted yet.
No, you love Give Energy. I think, to be honest, it comes down to you can't fit everything. And we've taken over a Give Energy job for a company that went bust, and a customer had it partially installed, but it just was never re-energized, and a bit of that sort of bit of commissioning and stuff. And it was all right stuff. But I'm just not. I can't fit everything myself. A bit like you can't fit everything for some of the stuff we fit.
Absolutely. I mean, we'd looked at Solar Edge because that's what Stuart Cater was fitting. Right, so that was like a conscious decision of ours to try not to tread on other people's toes and pick something that we hadn't seen much of on social media, I suppose, and Give Energy with that. And we've loved it. You know, everything has its pros and cons, and you get good and bad reviews online as well. But, you know, we've probably done 30, 40 systems and not had a problem. So
That's good. Yeah.
We wouldn't keep installing it if it wasn't any good, put it that way.
Yeah, exactly. You have to pick the horse sometimes, and if it's working for you, that's fantastic. Then is Kinetics come back with Give Energy opinions. Mark, you fitted a couple. Sam, you haven't. Do you feel there is better spec kit versus budget? I think it's all kind of like, I mean, the all-in-one looks pretty good, and that's probably the closest I've got to fitting it because of that all-in-one. But yeah, I think everything's kind of like bats on the same field. I mean, the Tesla Powerwall 3 looks like a different animal with like 11.04 kilowatt maximum discharge potential and 3 MPPTs built in. But everything else kind of bats on the same ground, really.
One of the systems we're trying to keep our selection of equipment to a narrow field, just because of you just said you don't know enough about all of these products to be confident fitting it. For the size of business we are, there'll be bigger businesses that'll have teams to do this and this.
Yeah.
But, you know, we're sort of SIG Energy, SolarX or SolX, whatever you want to say, and Give Energy. And the SIG Energy stuff, we really rate that. That's relatively new to market. They've now got single phase inverters up to 12 kilowatts, multiple strings. They all just go up in the stack. You can even have a DC car charger, 25 kilowatt output that sits in your stack as well. So, I mean, there's loads of stuff coming from all kinds of places, and you can just end up swamped with trying to learn
Yeah.
and commissioning the stuff, the courses you have to go on, it's like time as well, isn't it?
Yeah. We were going to have our first SIG system, but we didn't end up winning that job. But there is a question here from Camille who said, basically moving on from your point there, Mark, is there some EV chargers that allow direct DC charging from the home battery? And I think the SIG one is the only one I've ever seen.
Yeah, and Rocky or Yogi's in there from Triple Solar. They're the main retailer of that product. And,
He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, so modular inverter and battery spec, and it's 25 kilowatt. I think when it first came out in the UK market, it was 12 and a half, if I'm right in saying that. Right. And they do have a separate AC coupled one, but this sits straight in the stack. You can take 25 kilowatt DC out your batteries. Your PV can go straight into that as well. So if you've got a couple of stacks, that gives you quite a lot of flexibility as a residential consumer anyway, to transfer energy quite quickly. And I think it's capable of going the other way as well. Obviously, that's still got the regulatory approvals in the UK, but you might be in a position where it can do 25 kilowatts back from your car to the house, which is instantly game changer.
Yeah, I think the only difficult thing with that is having the car next to where the battery is going to be, and that's the same with any DC charger that's going to charge directly from the home battery. Is the battery's got to be sat next to the car, hasn't it? Unless you have like a 20-meter lead on it, but I wouldn't like that DC to just be strung that far.
That is true. There's limits, isn't there? I think. But yeah, we get to install one of the DC chargers from SIG Energy. I think most consumers are relatively happy with the overnight slow charging. It's kind of rare case, I'd say, where they need that faster access to energy. And I think when that will come in is when it can go the other way. That's when you want it. Yeah,
a bit like your question here. What do you think is going to kind of die away? What do you think is going to... This is a question for you. I'm skipping the queue. But what do you think is going to come online that is going to really flip things? Obviously, we've had the export side of things, which I think is kind of flipped everyone's minds with these systems. But, what do you think towards like vehicle to home and vehicle to grid, things like that?
Yeah, I think that's in the hands of the DNOs and the vehicle manufacturers at the minute, isn't it, for them to get their heads around? Because there's the wear and tear on the equipment, and electric cars are not low cost, and the DNOs start to get worried about that huge transfer of energy from one direction to the other potentially, and it's bottom all out. But that would be revolutionary, I think, to the way energy is used in the UK. It could probably solve rather than cause a lot of the problems we see in the grid. Because we can take our electric vehicles to other places, fill them up where it's designed to take that, and there'll probably be some sort of fluid tariff deals you can get on a little card that you'd swipe that maybe gives you so many units of power. Who knows? I think there's certainly stuff to be done in that space. I think that's the next big thing.
Yeah, that's the thing. I know OVO have been doing vehicle to home or vehicle to grid for a little while, but you have to have that massive Indra charger that's like a wardrobe on the side of your house.
Yes, I've seen it. It's huge, isn't it?
But yeah, that was just a select thing. But there's the vehicle warranty issue. There's all sorts of things. I think it was a Nissan Leaf that can do it as well.
Yeah.
So it's pretty niche, but yeah, that'd be interesting.
That answered one of the questions there coming in from Triple Solar. And then Jimbo has said, random, sorry guys, for someone who doesn't do solar, I would love to get into it. My issue is I can't do the course, but then I feel like you need to learn so much more in terms of softwares, brand roof, in aspects, planning. You're dead right, Jimbo. There's a lot to learn. It's not an easy road, is it?
No, definitely not. I've got a bit of a tainted view because a lot of my apprenticeship has been made up of this through like the feed-in tariff days. So I've kind of been drip fed a lot of this info. But anyone that's trying to run a business, trying to price stuff, trying to do training, trying to do all different things, there is a lot to go through. And that's why I get a lot of questions. I'm sure you get a lot of questions, Mark, around that. But it is literally you just have to get stuck in and just start learning it. And there's a lot of helpful organisations like we use Easy MCS that help us with a lot of the paperwork side on the MCS side of things. There's Paperclip, which I think is a similar kind of organisation and CRM kind of thing for it. But there's a lot of places out there that can help, and hopefully we can help in our own certain way to answer some questions. But there's just a lot to it, and so there should be when you put in like 20 panels that are all 25 kilograms each on a property and a battery that has got a huge amount of stored lithium cells. in someone's property. That's why the whole PAS thing is, in my view, so important. But yeah, there's no shortcut to it, really, if you want to do it properly. It is a difficult thing to learn.
Yeah, I think going back to what we'd said earlier, that if it's kind of an overview, you want the stuff out there you can dive into online for free. If you're looking to sort of get into it properly, you know, you're looking at months of hard work is the short answer to that. And there's wholesalers as well now. Waxman Energy, I didn't realise till we did the podcast with Sarah again, have a training facility of their own. So if you've got the time, you can go and do that. Local roofing companies as well is a good shout for working at height. The one across the yard from us actually run courses doing that, and they've been good enough to help us out as well with learning how to deal with different roof structures and coverings. So it's just asking questions, I suppose, and putting your best foot forward into it if you're going to do it.
It's like everything, you learn the most when you crack on, but you know, I appreciate that you don't necessarily want to turn up on site having done no research and have to put 20 panels on a slate roof and make an absolute dog's dinner of it. So there's that difficult step.
Sam's been watching us.
I've felt all that pain from starting Oval. So yeah, getting some experience, working alongside other companies as well is quite a good way.
In terms of the basic guide as well, Jimbo, we answered that. The Napit one that's just come out, it's about 25 quid. That's probably as good an overview as you'll find at that kind of price point. Other than that, you're looking at your code of practices from the IT, so it's the EESS. I think it's 3rd edition now.
Yeah.
I don't know what version the PV one's on. They'll be on different ones by the time this comes out publicly
probably.
anyway.
Yeah, that's it.
They change them that fast because it's such a fast-moving place. But yeah, those would be my suggestions.
Okay, I've got another one here. Best way to leave your DC cable. Best way to leave your DC cables that are connected to the panels if you're fitting a system on a new build and not coming back for a while, and scaffold will be down. So basically, how to isolate, how to basically protect those cables that are probably
sandwich
now
bags
live.
and electrical tape. No dirt.
So what we've done before is we've put them in like a whisker box or something like that, or a DC isolator, and made it off and then locked it off. Some sort of thing that you can, some sort of thing where you can safely terminate those cables inside that box. But it is difficult because you have got that generation on the roof that is going to be live for maybe 12 hours a day whilst it's during sunlight.
There's a good product that I saw you installing on your stories that we used as well from ProJoy. So it's like a automatic DC shutdown device that you could take your strings into. But most new build aren't probably going to have budget for one of those. So it's like you say, just onto an MC4 connector and make them as safe as you can. I suppose.
The other thing that is possible is potentially just bringing them through into the loft and making some MC4s, and you do get some MC4 bungs, but within that MC4 it's still going to be live. So that's why we prefer putting them in some sort of box or something like that, just because it just makes there's no accessible parts there. I have to turn those.
Sam's getting spammed for notifications.
I'm getting spammed. Okay, so yeah, hopefully that in some way answers that.
I've got another question.
Yeah, go for it.
So this one is saying, are there jobs in domestic electrical renewables for non-electricians? There is, in terms of roofing, for sure. We worked with a roofer who was okay. I know other electricians have had mixed results, but I mean, it's in and around the job for sure. Scaffolders are going to be involved. You might have ground workers if you're working on big domestic systems, ground mount, for example. But yeah, I wouldn't say it hurts to work with a roofer. How about you, Sam?
Yeah, I think there's definitely, it depends I think the question is about domestic. So domestic maybe slightly more limited because the jobs may be usually a week tops. But certainly in the commercial side, there's panel installations on big ground mounts. There's lots of different things that you can do, almost like a solar panel labourer almost. But it depends what your skill set is. Like Mark said, if you're talented at groundworks and things like that, then there's if you have to go onto the bigger commercial, potentially the ground mount stuff to get a lot of groundworks stuff like trenching and piling the legs in for the panels. But yeah, it depends what your kind of skill set is, really, I would say, on that one.
Yeah, we've got one. What's your views on original Stabilo MC4 and MC4 compatible ones?
It's a minefield. Isn't
It really is. When we first came into doing this, I got speaking to Paul Onyett from LK, and he got us into their solar connectors, and we really liked them. But obviously, they're kind of the actual product of the MC4. I think it was Stabilo that invented it, wasn't it? Everyone else has just kind of made a copy of it, for want of a better example. But is it? I think I'm right in saying that Solar Edge have a chart of compatibility that they've brought forward for certain brands that will interconnect with their optimizers.
It's, being honest, it is one of the biggest mistakes that the industry has made, has been not specifying the exact plug that goes on every panel, because it's just an absolute ball ache, to be honest. And I've not really had any faults, like even from like feed-in tariff systems. I've not had any that have been through a mismatch. It's always been just a poorly connected, like a connection or water getting in or bird mess all over them. So there's definitely a technical case there for it, but I've not seen a huge amount of it happening through mismatch. But I can totally see why it's important. And ultimately, there's things like the arc box and other things like that aren't going to stop something happening, but would stop something really serious happening. And with regards like Solar Edge, if that sees that's got arc fault detection built in, as long as you activate it, and then if it sees any arcing or anything like that, it shuts it down. But it's a great question, and it's a massive balls up from the industry, to be honest. I think it's like a lot of things, stuff moves so quickly that before they probably knew it, there was about 10 different MC4 types out there, and it was...
Yeah, it's mad. I mean, we use... I've forgotten the name now. It's going to Tiger optimizers, and they'll usually come with a different MC4 on the end of them as the panels that you're using. And it's do you break the manufacturer's instruction on those components and cut them off and put matching ones on, or do you happily make them together? I think as long as the leads that you're homebrew making, if you like, your leads up to the array have been made off of an appropriate tool for that connector, and you may be considering an arc box. They're made by Viridian, aren't they? I think.
Yeah, Viridian. Yeah.
Then I think you've made every best effort. But you're dead right, Sam. I think most of the failures is people who've just used pliers to crimp them on, if you're lucky, or just twisted them together and wrapped it around. Shoved it in. They're the ones that go wrong, aren't they? Generally.
Yeah. I've seen so many where it's actually the IP65 gland on the back that is holding the cable in place, and then you give it a little pull or another bird mess, because what tends to happen is if it's got no bird protection, all the bird mess runs down the cables. It all congregates around the heaviest point, which is the plug, and then it creates strain on that, and then it ends up pulling the cables apart, or the water gets in, and then it just corrodes it, and it's just an absolute show. But
nothing like trying to fight nature and wildlife, is there? It's a big part of solar job.
Right, let's have a look.
We're caught up on mine.
I think we're getting pretty caught up. A lot of people joined. There we go. What's your views on manufacturers' warranty replacement and getting paid? We want to do a podcast on this one. Should the customer have to pay a contract to replace inverter/batteries under warranty? And I think this is a continuation, especially as most of the time customers don't choose their inverter. Most times the installer chooses the system. Awesome. It's an awesome question. And it's one of our bugbears that we've actually spoken about, isn't it? Of doing a podcast.
This will be a triggering point, I think, for our chat tonight.
For me, I can see both sides of this. Like, a company that has an inverter has to be aware that sometimes it's going to be fitted incorrectly, and they're going to end up getting stung for a warranty change that probably isn't their fault. However, I do feel like paying 50 quid or something for an install to go back, like, it doesn't even cover your time to go back, your fuel, the missed job that you could have done. Like, it's so hard to quantify, because should they pay you like 500 quid to go back? It's like they're never going to make any money. So I can see that it has to be somewhere sensible. And what we've actually seen is more and more manufacturers contributing to that, but they're mainly just the parts warranty rather than the actual invoice. Because the other side of this, see what your thoughts are on this, Mark, is that customer has bought an asset, so it's kind of like that needs maintaining and looking after, and also ultimately parts buying for it if it does fail. So do you get paid with with companies to go back to do warranty replacement?
We've only had one in the PV side of things, and that was from Growatt, and we didn't get paid for that. We were very lucky to get the actual replacement part.
I was just going to say.
But yeah, more historically in the EV marketplace, for example, we've done a few hypervolts where they've paid us to go back and carry out repairs and such, only nominal fees, but I suppose it's something. The one person who shouldn't be paying, in my view, is the consumer, because as installers, we're giving that through our CPS providers the kind of warranty and guarantee on what we're doing, and there's a clause in there that does include provision of the equipment. So there's kind of the ongoing cost of that in your proposals, I suppose. Every job you're proposing carries an element of money in there that's going into a little pot to cover those times when you do have to go out, because you know the manufacturers aren't going to pay for that time, or if they are, it's nothing like enough. But yeah, I'd say there's at least a 5 or 6 year period that a consumer should reasonably expect to have a level of service. And I don't suppose you're getting that from some of the large nationals and energy retailers, but I'm speaking as a small contractor. That's kind of how we view it.
I think it's great. That's a great point. And also I think that has to come into your consideration is if you are going to work locally or nationally. We took the view to work nationally, and that is hedged on the fact that hopefully we are in and around, or we won't be long before we're in and around that area where one of our other systems might need an inverter changing. So it's kind of like making those decisions as well, as to go, you know what, we're going to be a 50-mile radius round, for me, York, or we're going to be nationwide, or we have a bigger radius, whatever. That has to factor into your business decision almost. But it is tempting when you get these larger jobs and they're like, oh, they're in Wales or something, but what happens if something goes wrong? And But yeah, we sort of rolled the dice on that a little bit and went national, and we have had problems there, but equally we've built up some really good contacts in and around these places, and that's why we like using contractors in and around the area we're installing, not to do the job, but to help us on it, so that if they go back, the customer knows them, they know the system and everything like that, to actually go back, because that 75 quid, that 150 quid or whatever is maybe a bit easier for them to factor in than us having to drive 4 hours there and 4 hours back to change the inverter.
Yeah, and again, I think it depends on the manufacturer. I know Give Energy, for example, have their own service techs who will go around and do repairs on equipment. Sometimes, I think we had one where a customer had gone on holiday and we didn't install the panels, a large energy retailer did, and there was a bird's nest underneath it that we'd seen when we went to install an additional battery. When they went on holiday, they shut everything down because they were nervous about leaving it while they were away, but they never turned the battery off, and it kind of sat there discharging itself. And when they got back, it had dropped below the SOC level where it could then recover from. So Give Energy had to come out, charge it. They did all of that. They didn't involve us. They were there in a few days doing it. So I think some manufacturers, and I think My Energy are another one, who have their own kind of engineers who do go out and look after these things. It's much better than looking after our installs rather than doing installs of their own. I do have to caveat that, but I think it just depends. It just depends. Obviously, a lot of these are international companies. They don't have, let alone field staff, but often tech support staff on the phones.
Yeah, definitely. And yes, it's a really good question, that, because where is the level? Like, if anyone in here has an idea as to whether they would like the level, that might be an interesting one to drop into the chat on either of the lives, and we'll see what you think the right figure would be.
You got any more in yours? I've had another one come in, unless you've got one to catch up.
Sorry, got this issue at the moment. All right, yeah. So that question has been asked by JD. I need some glasses on. They're too far away to get the angle. JD Electrical Energy Services. Yeah, we go. You got your binoculars on. As I'm late to the party. Well, there we go. Okay, right. So we're up to date on the questions there.
There's one here. Should we cover one on the paper, or do you want to go?
Let's do one on the paper, and then we'll go back to the chat. So keep dropping the questions in. This is great. Thank you very much for the questions so far.
Going to go back to one of yours, or should we do one of mine?
You can do one of yours, mate, if you want.
Okay, so how do smaller companies compete against national firms on PV prices?
I loved seeing that one. We were printing these out.
Yeah.
Service can't be cost, fortunately. It's a nightmare, isn't it? There's energy. There's every man and the dog entering this. I did a reel about this. There's every man and the dog entering this industry, and the only way you can compete is trying to show that local service that you can provide as a smaller company, that where your customer isn't just a spreadsheet number. But yeah, what's your view on it?
We've done a couple of episodes, haven't we? And kind of touched on it with Damon in his episode that'll be out in 2 weeks ish. It is exactly as you say, do the things that they can't do. So it's that customer service. It's setting that out to consumers as well. It is really hard when lots of people are shopping on price and you're trying to pitch in a place that isn't priced at that level. So understanding when not to compete as well, it's banging your head against a brick wall when somebody just wants an install that's going to go up next week and cost them a couple of £1,000 less maybe than what you can realistically do it for. It isn't easy, and hopefully the government of things help us out a little bit, because there's a few unfair advantages that the energy retailers have that need some sort of policing and stopping.
Yeah, there's a few different kind of angles of this. There's the big energy companies, there's big retailers like Wix and Costco that have started doing it. I think Hive that have started doing Hive Solar? Like, literally, think of a company and they're now doing it. But they do come and they do go. Like, it's getting to the point where I think now there are more of these companies that you wouldn't expect to go install than there was during the feed-in tariff era. Probably because solar back then was a little bit more technical than it probably is now, even though you've got batteries in the mix. But yeah, I don't know. I think it has to just be on service, unfortunately, because there's no way that you as a one-man band or you with 5 or 6 people or whatever size you are, you're not going to compete on price really, because they're going to be buying containers of batteries, containers of panels, and you have to try and get that over to the customer as best you can without seeming like you're sour about it, which I do realise that I am sour. I am actually quite sour about it, because it's sad to see that these systems getting thrown in, because whether or not you get a system from Wix or you get a system from you or me, Mark, or anyone watching this, it's a medium to long term investment, and like that customer can look at it and they can save £1,000 by going with a big company, but that £1,000 over the course of that system's lifespan of 25 years, it's next to nothing. And if that means that you're able to provide a better service for those 25 years, that is hopefully your customer, then suddenly, if only you could show them the value of that service before they commit to saving just £1,000 on a system, because I'm sure when they're in a hole and they need some help, they would have easily paid that £1,000 and more to have you looking after their system. But it's trying to get that over to them at the early stage is very difficult.
I think a good catalogue of your own work and what you can do is a great place to do, whether that's an Instagram account which has got loads of pictures and videos of stuff you've done, or it's a physical brochure, whatever it is, that will often set you apart from places like that, because the quality you'll have above them. It's just a fact.
Showing personality as well. I think people buy people, and trying to show your personality and your passion for it, as long as you are passionate for it, that is, that does tend to win over. But it's tricky, and we're all facing the same thing.
Definitely
on that one.
So someone said in here, have you ever gone back to one of your own jobs to change something because the thought of something you had done was just niggling in your head? That's from Somerset Farmhouse.
It sounds like they've done it themselves.
This might be someone who's been watching me, because I've often gone back when I found a neutral terminal bar cover in the back of the van or something when it should be inside a distribution board, or if I'm wondering, did I tighten that screw down just quite enough? And you turn around and go back and have a second look. But in terms of the renewables industry, I don't think we've had to go back, because I've had doubts about something.
I'm trying to think. There was probably something when I was an apprentice, like with every apprentice, because my apprenticeship was made up of this sort of stuff. I can't think about it, to be honest.
It is more of a thing, I would say, for general electrical work, where I've definitely gone back, even to the point of, did I turn that immersion element off after we've replaced it, or did I set that clock timer back to the right time?
You plug the freezer back in. That was a classic when you're doing work in people's houses. But yeah, renewables wise, I can't think that there was anything. But if I remember anything during this chat, I'll scream it out.
Someone's just said we need a 5-year parts and labour warranty. That was Triple Solar again. Otiva, Selene Octopus now subbing jobs out. How do they control the quality through subcontractors? Just like the Solar Together scheme, which the lowest bidders win.
I don't know. I don't know how they sort of quality assess their installers and all that sort of stuff. I can't remember who I was talking to, but apparently they only do south roofs or something. I don't know. I wouldn't like to make any wild accusations, but it'd be interesting if we can get to the bottom of it. We'd love Octopus to come on and especially after Damo's episode.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, it would be interesting to chat to them and find out all those things. And this is the thing. Like, I don't think Octopus haven't gone into this industry wanting to rob people. I don't get that feeling. It's just the nature of the beast that they are, how big they are, and what they're able to, the power that they've got, and kind of mucking the waters between energy tariffs and installations is stuff that we can't compete with. I don't get the feeling they've gone into it to try and rob a load of stuff. I think it's just they've entered it, and we've got to deal with them entering it as a company.
They're a disruptive energy brand, aren't they? They've gone in there against some massive big players and done a brilliant job. They're an excellent energy retailer, and I think they've maybe applied that same logic to what isn't the same marketplace, and it's really starting to affect smaller independent installers. And I'd like to think they didn't want to do that, but time will tell.
That's the thing. Time will tell is the main thing, because if they are actually, this question is one that will be answered probably over the next 3 years, if I should say really, because I don't know that it will, if roofs start leaking, if panels start slipping, if they don't honour inverter warranties, or like it takes a bit of time for this stuff to filter through. They might be absolutely on the money with it all, but who knows? We'll have to wait. And that's the tricky point in this market at the minute, is that for a lot of customers, they are the golden, like the silver bullet to the industry, because they're an energy provider, they're a big company, this, that, and the other, and they've provided some really cool tariffs. But we'll see what happens over the next 3 years. They might nail it, and we might be facing this going forward, or they might, like some of the feed-in tariff companies that entered, the big players that entered the market during the feed-in tariff times, they might get a really bad reputation and they might decide to pull out of it. But no one knows which way that's going to go. We'll just have to wait and see.
Good answer.
I've got one here from Camille, who has been a massive source of my questions. So thank you very much for that, Camille. Hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Will dirty panels cause faults? Do you recommend customers to clean it? What do you think of that one, Matt?
I mean, definitely clean them. My garden backs onto a farmer's field, and almost every March, and this time of year actually as well, just after harvest, they get absolutely covered in dust. And if it's not rainy enough, because panels will self-clean to a degree, it's well worth washing them off. I think you get your money back in the cost of having it done in your extra generation. Just make sure that you're having them cleaned in the right way is what I would say. Don't have a hard brush on them, and get them cleaned properly.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing with this as well is water sitting on the panels. So things like that. This is why a lot of panel manufacturers don't allow or don't warranty their panels if they're installed flat, because they don't want water sitting there kind of attacking that aluminium seal to get the water behind the glass and into the silicon. So if you don't get them cleaned and you've got moss and things starting to grow, which I've seen plants growing out of them, like, this nature finds a way, you do need to try and keep on top of that so the water can run off them. And also, if you have heavy shading on the panels through bird mess and things like that, then that can create hot spots as well. So that can cause problems with the panels and blow diodes and all sorts of things. So definitely maintenance on it. But it's difficult because if you've got a solar panel system on a really, like, some of these new builds are really tall and thin. Like getting access, the scaffolding could cost you £400 or £500 to get up there. And if you're having to do that every year because you're in, a bit of an agricultural area, that's a lot of money to be spending every year. So it's a toss up between that. And what you really need is like a decent Velux window there, don't you? So you can get out of there. But
the solution's coming. I've seen drones that are going up and cleaning panels. I mean, these technologies are developing at a rate of knots.
Yeah.
And if window cleaners can make money somewhere, you can guarantee they'll find a way. So
there's an awesome company that are at Solar and Storage Live every year called Helios, I think it is. And they have a little like robot that runs across panels, but it's more for solar farms and things. But it'd be interesting to see if they bring out like a smaller one. But yeah, that has like a tank of water and also the I'll call it soap, but it's not soap, but the cleaning fluid that you use, pH neutral solution, so that it doesn't eat away at that protection on the glass and everything as well. So you're not it's not nothing acidic or alkali to actually burn through any of that, because after a while you can see that kind of eats away at the protection on that. So
Should we work through some of the paper ones and come back to finish
let's
up
do
on
that. So keep the questions coming in online. You go through one of yours then.
So we've got, what's a good all-round setup for battery and solar with an EV charger, and that's from Richard Cockerline. Well, the one we kind of defaulted to is the Give Energy system. We really rate it. Again, with SIG Energy, we've already mentioned it. I know that Solar Edge as well, so watching your content, that they have these things. Yeah. So I wouldn't say there's really, any direction. It's pitching something to fit your lifestyle, really, isn't it? And what you want. It's not really the manufacturer or such.
Yeah, I think for me, instantly, the MyEnergy system, because the Zappi has just been killing it on the EV charger for a lot of years. The app is really good. It is obviously a more expensive option. It is a fantastic option. Like, I've got that at my house. The app is just so good. There's things that I'd love them to change, like scheduling a forced discharge, so you don't have to just tap the button and then stop it. But that's app updates and things. But yeah, as a system, I know they don't. It's not. The battery isn't made in Grimsby, and it's it's come from China like everything. But the controllers are made in Grimsby, the Eddies are, the Zappis are, and backing British manufacturing is a good one. But yeah, a lot of these manufacturers are coming out with chargers now. The Solar Edge ones come out, and the charger isn't that good, but it allows you to have that integration. I saw Alpha have brought out a charger now as well. There's obviously the Give Energy one. Trying to think what else has got a charger. I think a lot of them are seeing that kind of all-in-one demand coming out.
I mean, there's still standalone EV brands like Hypervolt and stuff. They're all integrating solar and battery systems into their EV chargers, aren't they? I know with on my own house, you've got MyEnergy at yours. I've got Give Energy at mine. I guess that maybe says where we're both at on that in more ways than any, doesn't it? But yeah, the thing I like about the Give Energy is the ability to have the charger not discharge the house battery. It will also do scheduled discharges, but you can also direct I'm assuming the MyEnergy does this as well, but your solar, you can put maybe 30% into your vehicle and 70% into the house battery. It gives you loads of flexibility to move energy around aside from the vehicle back to the house.
Yeah.
And it's just really easy, the app integration. So I think that's kind of where I'm at. But there's lower cost solutions as well. There's other products on the market that can do those things that don't cost as much, but they maybe don't integrate with an energy tariff quite so well. So it depends on your budget, your lifestyle, I suppose, and there's no real, this is the thing you should do answer. No,
you got the SIG stuff. You've just been saying about like the DC. You might have a perfect location for a DC rapid charge, but if it's a 30 kilowatt hour or a 20 kilowatt hour battery, then you're only ever going to deliver. You're just going to deliver 20 kilowatt hours a lot faster into your car. So, and that's not going to fill it unless you've got like a version 1 Nissan Leaf that went about 40 miles or something like that. But yeah, that's a good question.
Long solar run, 150 metre plus, steel wire armour or DC singles in twin wall duct.
Oh, PV Ultra, what I said about. So yeah, that is a good one, and I think solar farms and that are seeing this sort of question coming up. In all seriousness, there is PV Ultra that I do have to be honest, I've got a stake in that, so I am recommending that because it is a really good product. But just to be clear, I've got a stake in that. But yeah, singles, you can get duct grade solar PV cable as well. That's a lot harder. Before PV Ultra was brought out, we did a one up in Penrith that was 208 panels, and that was a twin wall duct with 10 mil PV cables that was duct grade and everything like that. So SWA is not recommended now. I've used it in the past, but it's not recommended because of the makeup of the cores and everything else.
You need an SWA Doncaster PV Ultra cable.
There is one coming. There is one coming.
That's the answer to the problem, isn't it, really? Combining those two things, I think, because you get the robustness. I think everyone's used to the armourings for a cable that's going in the ground because we feel like it's robust, it's strong, you've got that earth metallic covering. But in the world of DC, things are different because there's no real earth, if you like, to that generation, is there? It's different. I guess in an ideal world, you'd have your inverter down with the panels and distribute the AC back through your trenches, but we know it doesn't work like that. So.
Yeah, the 1% volt drop usually kills that,
Yeah.
because 1% volt drop over 150
It's a
metres, you're going to
lot.
have to be like paralleling 70 mils up or something like that for like a 3.68 inverter.
Gets expensive, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's a great question, and there's a whole podcast probably on what do you do with the SWA on DC cable, like the actual armouring, because that is something that is coming out through the PV Ultra. But do you earth it, do you not? And that is a bit of a head scratcher.
That was JSR Electrical who sent that one in.
Thanks very much, JSR. Do you want to read that one from the OG of solar?
Mr. Cater. This will put the cat amongst the pigeons, I'm sure. Do you think there should be a national register of solar battery installations for the fire brigade?
It's a fantastic question, and I had a very interesting chat. I think you did as well with
Probably
Stuart.
a good shout, actually, I'd say.
I think it should be done through MCS. I think there should be a register on MCS showing what you've installed as part of like almost like an MCS app or something like that, where as part of your commissioning you need to take photos of what you've done, where you've installed it, and all of that kind of stuff, so that then that can be fed to whoever it needs to be fed to, like the fire brigade and everything, and actually start to use technology, not just like pen and paper on this sort of stuff anymore. We can send satellites up into space. We can see a postage stamp from space, but we can't have a central system from a central body like MCS that basically can distribute that information. So I'd love to see something like that. But yeah, I think as the past document becomes more heavily weighted and people actually start doing it, I feel like stuff like a central register just kind of have to happen to try and keep the quality high. And unfortunately, it's probably going to come when there's a fire, I reckon.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. In terms of the fire responders, I'd say it's going to be useful information to them to know there's solar PV there. And as you've said, it would be quite an easy thing, you would think, for MCS to have some sort of link up with 999 first responders, so they can fire that over to their iPads or whatever they're using in fire trucks to say there's PV on this.
Yeah, has it got rapid shutdown?
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
So they know, they're at least aware of it before they attend the property, that, just have a quick shout around the cab, there's PV on this one, and they'll probably, oh God.
It's night anyway, we're all right. But yeah, that's great question, Stuart. Thanks for that. So my last question that was sent in on mine, and then we'll have a look, see if there's any other questions. So anyone that's in the live, drop your questions in. We're not just doing questions on paper, we're doing them from the live chat as well. So my last question on here from Camille again. Do we, as installers, recommend the equipment, or we take the customer, or what we want the customer to have, or what the customer wants, sorry. So I'll repeat that because I completely mashed that up. Do we, as installers, recommend the equipment, or do we basically let the customer recommend the equipment?
Yeah, there's two angles to that. In terms of the basics around electrical installation, like switchgear, isolators, the customer ain't picking that. We are as installers, but certainly with some of the equipment in terms of the battery storage, your inverters, your EV chargers, customers are doing their own research. They're finding things that they've seen. They're not totally closed-minded, I would say, but most of them have an idea. Certainly for us, they're coming to us for Give Energy installs.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, because if we take it back to kind of domestic sparking, it's almost like your customer will probably tell you they want brushed chrome or satin chrome, should I say, and or brass or whatever, on like the sockets and downlights and whatever else you're installing. But they probably won't say, I want a Proteus DB or whatever. They'll let you make that decision. The interesting thing around renewables is that it's a mixture of the two, because there's equipment that we like for the technical side, but there's also the integration with people like Octopus that the customer wants to take advantage of, the app that they've seen that's really good, and kind of like the user interface.
Such a good point, that.
So I think it's merging the two together, and it's annoying when you get a customer that wants a really rubbish system, and you've got to try because they're usually more expensive. They're usually cheaper, and you have to try and convince them that not to go for that, and to go for a better system. But it is a mixture of the two. I feel like the installer's going to sign it off, so it has to be the installer's final decision if they choose to fit that. But
I think there's definitely education for the consumers around inverter sizes and battery storage sizes, because a lot of them come with ideas of, let's put a 10 kilowatt inverter in, for want of a better example, but they've only got 3 kilowatts of generation because they think they're future proofing. But they don't realise you can start affecting performance and other such things around all of that by oversizing your inverters, and also the cost drastically rises because of that bigger piece of equipment. So there's conversations there. Most consumers who are coming to us have already got a very good idea of the products they want installing.
Probably come through YouTube videos and things that you've put the case for. And that's the case for us. We've obviously done Solar Edge for a long time, and we're doing more of the Libbies now from My Energy, and they are all, people are coming to us asking for those because of the evidence that we've put out there. But it'd be interesting if like Tesla created a distribution board for that, and if people would then
imagine
what that would look like.
Octopus and consumer unit.
Yeah, an octopus consumer unit. It would be interesting to see, if that big brand, because you don't necessarily have those big brands in other areas, but you get that mixture of like Tesla with the car, and obviously everything that Elon does, and everything's kind of combined. So yeah, that's a really good one.
Should we do a question off the live?
Yeah, have you got one?
I've got one there. So somebody said, it's Somerset Farmhouse again. Thoughts on companies like Heatable gathering customers to dish out to subbies to do the work? I mean, there's large. I'm not going to pick on one particular installer, but there is these not energy companies, but these solar large retailing companies out there who do use subcontract supply chains, and I think there's nothing wrong with using subcontractors. We've got Magic Mike coming on jobs with us, but I'd say he's working with us rather than for us.
Yeah,
I think that's the key difference.
That's always been something that I've been really. Is one of my like red lines almost. Is that I'm not going to become a lead generation site through the YouTube side of things where we're just generating leads and then farming them out to Tom, Dick and Harry around the country. We use subcontractors on a lot of our jobs. For example, Ollie's been working with us from Zinc Electrical with Dean. Ollie was an employee of mine, but it's not a case of, Ollie, because he's now a subcontractor, we can't use him because he's a subcontractor. He's had the years of being taught by me and the team and working with the team. Not just going to cast him out just because he's become a subcontractor, but there's a difference between that and just going, someone down in Plymouth and you're based up in York, just go and smash that in for us. You've got half a day to do it and throw it in as fast as you can. So on the flip side of that, for example, Heatable, if they're doing plenty of training and they're making sure the qualifications are all right, and they've got some sort of quality assurance on that, then I suppose if that's their business model, I think the one difficult thing with that is as long as the customer knows to expect that. Because if I've worked for companies in the past, luckily the one I'm thinking of isn't in business anymore, where they basically sent me a T-shirt and said, if the customer asks, you work for us. And I've been like, I aren't lying to the customer. Like, if they ask, I'm going to say that I subcontract to you. I'm not going to lie to the customer's face to say I'm an employee. So yeah, it's a fine line, but I think you're right, Matt. You have to work. Subcontractors have to work with you, not doing jobs on your behalf.
I mean, again, even from YouTube, people have raised question about employees of mine doing installs rather than me myself, and it's like, that's a view of one job, not the whole work of our business. When you see something on YouTube and the people we employ work to the same standard, and it's the same with the subcontractors, and you maybe don't get that from some of the larger nationals, so you just do your research, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
That one. So have you got any questions in your live? Or?
I have, but you fire away whilst I just have a little
Okay, so
check.
There's another one from Mr. Cater. He's saying, what part of the PAS document will have the biggest impact of all on the battery industry? That's a good question.
Impact.
I think the outside bit has got to be, it's the key principle of all of that. There's loads of stuff in the PAS document that lots of people have missed or overlooked or not fully applying as yet, that I think will come down the line and start to bite installers and manufacturers. But the standout thing for me is the intention of putting them outdoors. Yeah,
because it rules out flats instantly through, and as the grid gets more and more flexible, and you maybe don't need solar on your property to take advantage of flexible tariffs and this, that, and the other. You might have $5,000 that you want to invest in a home battery for backup purposes. It might not be anything to do with energy saving. It might be backup purposes. You're kind of like, right, well, I live 10 floors up. What am I going to do? But equally, that has to be protected because you live 10 floors up and there's maybe 10 more floors above you. So, yeah, I think there's another one of your questions that mentions about should fire alarms. Should we go further with the PAS document and integrate fire alarms with this stuff? And that's something that we did look at. And I know ACO do have like a relay box where you could potentially wire in a signal to shut down the system. But the outside thing, definitely. I think the battery industry will be okay with the kilowatt hour side of things. I think domestically, 40 kilowatt hours inside and 80 outside, I think it is. They're big systems. They are big systems. Like, there's not going to be many properties that need that size. So
Good luck fitting them inside.
Yeah, that's it. You need, it'd be a big property which would be over the 200 metre squared sort of floor print anyway.
Yeah, I think, but I guess is what Stuart's maybe alluding towards here. I don't want to speak for him, but it's the fire safety side of it. And I guess the outdoors element of the PAS is covering that off. So it's all your smoke fire detection, fire sealing of penetrations as well. I know from speaking to him that's something he's picked up on in the PAS document.
Yeah.
So I think it is all tracing back to fire safety, and maybe that's a good thing for installers to become more aware of that generally anyway. We should be fire sealing every pendant that goes to the ceiling, but how many do you take down even in new build that haven't seen that?
Yeah, it's just not happening, is it?
No.
There is a disconnect there, but there's no equipment to my knowledge that complies with PAS yet, so it is impossible to fully comply to it through like the battery alarms and all this sort of stuff. Like, you only need an alarm on the battery if the battery itself has gone into like a high temperature thing and it's done it like 4 times. I can't remember, but no system is doing that yet. And I think until PAS has even more weight behind it, they're not gonna. So we just take the view of just installing everything as closely as we can to PAS, and then we just have to deal with it as best we can.
We're on that page too. So
yeah, cool.
You got any questions in your?
Right, yeah, I've got one here. I think I saw one just down here. When installing a multi-inverter system with a lead and follower inverter, are you required under MCS to install an import/export meter for each inverter or just for the lead inverter? So I'm not sure if you mean, that sounds lead and follower is definitely how Solar Edge refer to it. So I'm not sure if you're referring to Solar Edge. And I'm also not sure if you're referring to the energy meter that Solar Edge have to show import/export, or if you're referring to the like the generation meter side of things. On the Solar Edge side, if in that case you would just need one import/export meter, like the Solar Edge equipment for that, and that would go into the leader because the follower is just taking all that information from the leader. Generation meter wise, you would need a generation meter per inverter for the MCS side of things to track that, unless you could get the one generation meter to track the whole generation through like a CT system or something like that. But is that what you kind of take from that?
I wonder if it's more the G99, G100 aspect. Looking at it. I mean, you'd have the relay. I don't know how Solar Edge works, but if you've got a generation above, I don't know, 6 to 8 kilowatts, you would generally be looking at having one of the G99, G100 relays. With multi-inverters.
Yeah.
So I don't know how the Solar Edge system sets up, but I'm just thinking when I've installed inverters side by side that aren't master and slave for one, they need to go through that joint disconnect based on what's been exported.
Yeah.
I wonder if Solar Edge can do that in software.
Yeah, it does. So it has to have, I think Solar Edge put out a guidance that any system over 3.68 has to have the we call it Modbus energy meter, because of the whole G100, G99, like the new, I think it's like /2 or something like that, needs to have that. So we've started pricing that in. But yeah, I took that more as to the Solar Edge equipment. So hopefully that was
probably right.
That was hopefully the right way. Got another one here.
Let's go. Let's clean some of those ones out.
Can you see any additional incentives from the government for installing solar and battery systems? No, that is okay. But when you see the incentives for heat pump installs, it's a shame we can't offer more.
I vote we take them off the plumbers as well and give them to the electricians. Seconded.
Yeah. No, my view on it is I just want them to extend the 0% VAT at the minute. I feel like any of us that work predominantly in domestic, if the VAT was put to 20%, it would be pretty catastrophic for the domestic market. I'd love them to say that they're going to extend it for another 5 or 10 years on the on the VAT at 0%, but we'll see what happens over in October when the budget comes in. Hopefully I think they'll leave it as it is, but we'll see. I think it's probably got another like 3 years to run or something from when Rishi did it, but we'll see on that. But incentives wise, I don't think they've got the money, to be honest. I just don't think, and I think it stands up on its own at the minute for quite a lot of people. I don't think we can expect a £7,500 grant for solar PV, unfortunately, at the minute. Doing the 0% on batteries and energy diverters like the Eddy and other ones like that was a really good thing, and that's why I'd love to just see that continue for the foreseeable, really.
I think that's the realistic expectation at best, because the heat pumps don't have the same payback as the solar stuff, so they need that boost, if you like, to get people to adopt them if we're going to decarbonise energy. So it makes sense at that level, whatever the amount is. But yeah, just the 0% VAT. I think that's as good as we're going to get if we're realistic.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, great question. Right, have you got one, Matt, there?
Yes, I've got burying DC cables. Realistically, what's the current best method? And I guess that ties in with what we spoke about, that it's PV Ultra and just go and buy it.
Thanks, Matt. It's £10. No, there is some guidance in, well, I've actually just bought the new, it's the battery one actually, but the latest solar one does have some guidance for burying DC cables, because last year at Solar and Storage, that was a question that I got a lot of how do you actually bury DC cables? And I haven't got the book in front of me, but it was basically through a certain grade duct. I think the twin wall meets it, but I'd have to check. And through a route that is that has been marked on like a plan, so that anyone digging can check that plan. Obviously, it's got the tape and all the other standard stuff that we'd expect, and then that is at a sensible depth as well. That would have been Penry if he put it deep. Like this thing was like. It was easily over. I think it was easily over a metre deep. It was well deep, but yeah, it's using the right cable as well. Really, I would say. So if you're not using PV Ultra, then things like the duct grade stuff, and you're not just banging kind of normal PV under the ground.
Yeah, it's sealing your ducts as well, because not just in DC, but ducts get flooded surprisingly often because people just put a bit of expanding foam in the end and consider that sealed. So if you have got the ends of your ducts in the elements, make sure you seal them, because water will find a way. It'll sit around all those cables in the duct, and eventually from a little crack that inevitably gets in the odd bit of cable here and there as it's drawn through a duct, that moisture will find a way.
Rodents as well.
Yes.
I've seen, that they absolutely destroy it, especially if it's a decent sized duct, where you can get a full family in. But the other thing that I've seen, interestingly, is people running positives with positives and negatives with the negatives in separate ducts, so that you don't get that arcing between the positives and negatives. Obviously, it's an extra duct and what have you, but I've seen that on some of the bigger installs where they don't want that. It won't stop, obviously, a rodent chewing through it, but it might mean that it doesn't burn
That's a good idea, that.
The full lot.
I like that.
I don't know how we do on time, really.
We're well over our recording,
Are we?
We'll start to eat through. I think we've got 2 more on paper, and I've not got any more in my live chat.
Okay, cool. Well, I've got... have you known a DNO refuse a G99 application, or will they generally only ever limit/restrict any export? Well, have you had any G99s totally refused?
Yes, we have had one refused out of question. They just said no.
Right.
Like a big residential estate, I think it's 1970s, and lots of the neighbouring properties already had solar on, that already tapped down. Voltage rise was quite high, and I think the costs associated with doing anything to upgrade it was so extreme that there was just nothing that they could really offer that would be realistic, so they just said no. And I guess that leaves you with the G98 and G98 aspect, which if enough people start doing, I don't see how that actually solves the problem anyway.
Yeah, I can't think off the top of my head any that we've had just flat out refused. I believe we might have had one or two on like a looped system when the property's been on a loop, which obviously needed sorting anyway for putting like a 5 or 6 kilowatt inverter on, and they've already got like all sorts of other things in there. But yeah, that's usually we can't do this because of this reason, or you can't have a 10 kilowatt export. You can have a 10 kilowatt system, so potential export, but limited down to 5 or something like that. That's why the fast track G99, where you have 2 devices that are under 32 amps per phase. Or is it total generator? I can't remember now. I'm looking at the form, but basically 2 devices. I think it's the combined they are over 32 amps, and you have to export limit that site to 16 amps, which is what we're doing on the job that Dean and Ollie have been on today with the Manager Libby. That just has to be export limited to 16 amps, but it's under the 32 amps combined. That's good.
Yeah, it's one of those, isn't it, where we're in the laps of the government and the DNA, so what's going to go on there? I've got a question from Penfold Electrical, best pathway to MCS. I think we kind of answered that earlier on, that there's no real clear pathway, is there? I think you've got to get your solar and battery courses done. They're a requirement. You've got to go through the process of an assessment out on site, but there's all the other stuff out there, like your insurances, working at height, if you're going to work with a roofer, getting a subcontract pool of people together that you're going to need as part of your MCS application, as well as scaffolders and such. It's difficult to lay that out as a step-by-step process somebody could follow. Is not straightforward, and I'm saying that as someone who's done it in the last couple of years. Yeah,
absolutely. It is difficult. I think it's one of them. If it's something you definitely want to go into, I'd say just start and chat to your competent person scheme like Napier or NIC, whoever you're with, and actually just get and start, because they'll outline what you need to have in place to be to basically to qualify, if you like, to become an MCS approved installer. And that's where it's like little breadcrumbs. You start collecting information up, get your courses done, start having a chat to MCS and via Napier or NIC, and then just start learning about it all. But we use Easy MCS, or I think they maybe changed the name now, but a company that has a lot of template forms and things. So don't kind of get just blinded by everything you've got to do. You want to, if there is a lot to do, don't get me wrong, but don't get blinded by it. You just have to start and start collecting that information up.
Yeah, good tip. Just build a roadmap and follow it.
Yeah.
I've got a couple more questions. One we've kind of already answered. It's, do we take pass one step further and start linking smokes to inverters?
That was the one I was on about.
And Connor, then this other one we've sort of answered as well. What's your dream battery inverter system look like? What features would it have? So I guess that's maybe not asking on the current market, but what do we see has been the dream? I think it's already heading in that direction, where we haven't got so many separate component parts, and it's just one box that does the lot.
I think things that take the stress away from you. So it'd be actually not necessarily inverters like this, the actual hardware, but like the
no more commissioning.
but like not necessarily like, oh, this is my dream inverter. It's blue. It's great. It's kind of like more the apps and the integration with energy providers and the flexible tariffs, and having a system that works all that out for you. We're all busy juggling kids and family and all sorts of other things, and work, that we don't necessarily have a lot of time to sit there and just plan out like when you're going to discharge your battery and what's the weather going to be like tomorrow. And we're already starting on that path with kind of these AI-backed systems. But yeah, I think stuff like that can do the thinking for you is the dream system. And then just hopefully the fire side of things. Ever since this PAS thing came out, I'm just like thinking about fire things all the time. So maybe a different battery chemistry that's lighter, that, is made of water, or, certain things like that. I don't know. But I think for me, the big one is the app and all of that, because that's what the customer sees, and that's what's really most important to the customer, really, is that what they see, not what's sat in their garage or, outside their house somewhere. It's that app that they're looking at every single day.
Yeah,
for me.
You're right. I think it's AI and apps. That's where the big improvements need to come, and we'll see that. You got any questions in your life? I've had a couple come in, if you've got any.
Yeah, got one there. Where are we there? Who would you recommend to go with regards to the warranty? A lot of the warranties are very similar. Storage have a decent warranty that you can upgrade up to 25 years, but you have to buy that upgrade. But a lot of them are around, like the inverters are kind of around 10 years.
Give Energy's 12 years,
12 years,
but most are sort of 10 to 12 years now. I think,
Storage standard one is 12. If you're really looking at warranty, then I don't know any others that upgrade it up to 25 years.
And the warranties are only as good as the brands behind them, because most of these aren't insurance backed, and we've seen in the EV marketplace these companies go out of business. So it's making sure, if you're valuing the warranty, make sure you're choosing a brand that you think is going to be there to cover that. 12 years is a long time.
A hell of a long time. And this kit, especially batteries, haven't been out there that long. So that I don't think it's going to be. None of us know that if this really reputable company is going to be there in 12 years, but especially if all their batteries started failing after 8, and they've got to replace a load. So it's trying to do a bit of investigation there as to how suitable the company is.
Any more? Shall I go with this one?
You go for that one,
So we've got one here from AJB Electrical Renewables. For G99 Fast Track, is export limitation a must? As in limited to 16 amps. So when you make a G99 application, it depends on the response from the DNO. They will set. We've had one that we're on now where their limitation was set at 12 kilowatt, which was the size of our inverters, battery, and so essentially no limitation. And others where we've been putting, an 8 kilowatt inverter alongside a battery storage system that can output 6 kilowatt, and they're telling us they want an export limitation down at 6. So I think it depends on what comes back. For your G98, then you're at 3.68 kilowatts, whatever it is.
Weirdly, I've had jobs where we've had a system that had an export limitation lower than 3.68, and it got me thinking as to, well, what if we'd just done a G98 and we'd just turned up and banged a 3.68 inverter in? But I don't know if they take that opportunity to actually then limit you when they actually look at it, and they just hope that if you do a G98, everything will be all right. But I think export limitation will be a big one, and to us is the only way that we all get these systems, because you can't have like 10 properties on a street all with 6 kilowatt inverters and all on probably an octopus tariff where it's they're paying you 15p to export and you're all bouncing 6 kilowatts back to the grid. But then will the energy tariffs be more directed to you as a household and be more kind of specific to you, so that if you have got a lot of people in your area that are exporting and you aren't, you basically don't get that same rate? I don't know, but I think export limitation is a massive one, and I think that's why they probably tightened up the G99-100 or G100- I can't remember which way around it was, but that's probably why they tightened it up, to try and force more people to put these sort of monitoring and limiting devices in.
I can see one of your questions there that kind of ties in with another one coming in here. That's listen to the recent podcast where you discussed the idea of all installs should be inspected. Theoretically, they should be anyway by building control. When we self-certify, maybe not so much. Schemes give you an exemption. MCS are extra hassle. And you've got a question there about MCS.
Yeah, I've got a question to say. What do you think will happen to the future of MCS? That was a demo one as well, wasn't it? We spoke about that on the one that's coming out in the next few weeks. And what's your view on that?
I think we said in that podcast that MCS is one of those things that takes a bit of a beating, but I think if it's applied in the right way, could actually help us as smaller independent installers. If we're not careful, some of these massive energy retailers who would rather not have to go through MCS, I'll have carte plans to do what they like, unmoderated, unregulated, unchecked. I think that's a worse place to be than we are now. But MCS have definitely got improvements they need to make in the way that they're auditing work, either electronically, looking at pictures of what's been done, keeping better records, doing better inspections out on site. There's things they do need to improve, less bureaucracy and more focus on the actual doing of the job.
Yeah, and we have had rumblings of that. They are apparently tightening up a lot more on the physical inspections rather than just being so paperwork heavy, from what I've heard, but we'll wait and see if that comes out. But I think my view on it, and we spoke to Demo about this, is that MCS or something similar has to exist So it isn't just the Wild West. We've already gone through that you're fitting all these things on people's roofs. It can be dangerous if it's not done right. As the PAS document hopefully gets more weight behind it, there's going to be more things for these inspectors to look for. You can't just go, there's all these regulations, but we're not going to come and look at it, because ultimately that's where all these regulations just get thrown away. I think there has to be something like MCS. Doesn't mean that I think MCS are perfect at the minute. I do think they need to tighten up on the physical inspections, like you said, Mark, but also have this central database where they can audit it. I think we touched with Jordan about the whole AI side of things, like physically just using these systems, just modernise really, and use these systems to your advantage, and actually actually just sort of have an AI looking through these systems. It probably isn't hard to teach an AI to look for a battery next to a sofa or something like that, that shouldn't be there, and to flag it for a human to look at. So yeah, that would be my take on it.
There's a question coming from a good friend Gavin from Sulis, and he's saying, loving the podcast. Thoughts of the best PV tester out there at the moment? TIS or the PV150 or the Fluke? So many choices, and nearly 2K. Some of them are more expensive than that.
Yeah,
Gavin, to be fair, my choice is the TIS stuff.
And I've got the PV150, so it's quite well looked at. And I've been chatting to you about the TIS, haven't I? I think the Seawood PV150 is an alright tester, but from what I've seen with Mark's stuff, the TIS looks like it just gives you like a world more of information. So it's tricky. It depends how much you want to spend. A bit like a multifunction tester, really. Just a standard one. Depends what you want to spend, really.
I think in the world of optimizers, it's difficult to do a great deal of testing. And the reason I like the TIS one is it will do like performance testing, so you can get an array into function and have a printed out result sheet of what an array performed like based on the sun that was hitting it at a set time of day. And there's a record of that, and it'll tell you based on the panels that you've inputted, all the data of the panels, if that's right or not.
Yeah, that's what I really liked about that video that you posted about.
You can work it all out, you can do, but I don't understand what alpha, beta and gamma figures need calculating, and that's a big equation, so it's much easier to just use a test set.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let technology do it.
Got another one? Oh no, this is just coming back from AJB Electrical Services saying, thanks. Are they ensuring these installations are limited, such as witness tests, or just hoping we comply? I've got two examples of that. Most of our installs, they just take our word for it. But I do know Neil Bridgman had his DNO area engineer come out and test his. Twice, I think. It's the first time it didn't work.
All right. Yeah. I think SSE, over a certain size, they always come out and do a witness test on it. Or certainly have with us, whether or not it's just a flag on our company, I don't know. But they, over a certain size, they do. But DNOs, which are private companies, kind of do what they want. They do let you kind of self-certify under a certain set of rules that you should have followed. But
just sign the G99, is it -2 testing? They just ask you to sign the box to say you've done it generally, don't they? I think
that's it.
I've got one last question. Your choice of PV test certificates. We are using Modex Soft Electrical OM. Do use a little bit of NAPIT fast test, but that's kind of where we are with that, unless you mean the actual PV arrays, in which case we're using the forms that are on Easy PV.
That's same with me. The Electroform, we use Electroform for all of our stuff, but the PV one is monstrous. Like it's an absolute monster. So we just use the standard forms from Easy MCS. Right, there is more questions here, but we're going to be here all night. But I think we'll do some more of this. I've really enjoyed this.
We can do it. Kind of do it again.
Thrown us into the hot seat, which is nice. Evening, lads. With batteries more than often getting installed outside now, what's your thoughts on the capacity in cold weather? We've started installing Sig Energy, who have heated packs inside. Yeah, I think the Libby does. I'm pretty sure the Magic Libby has that as well. A
lot of them are naturally warm, aren't they? Certainly the all-in-one, you can give energy to the inverters on top of the batteries, so they do a bit of heating of themselves. But in terms of pads, I know that ICS, that inverter has heating pads inside. Sig Energy definitely does. But it's like preconditioning of your car battery, isn't it? So it's trying to get better performance by using a bit of energy to warm them up. Yeah,
absolutely. I think as the PAS document becomes more and more kind of heavy-footed, and people start making more use of it and kind of stick to it, then manufacturers will start hopefully tweaking their equipment to allow us to comply with more of it. And that comes down to functionality as well. And if we're installing stuff outside all the time, then IP ratings are going to have to be, certain things are going to have to be looked at there, because I know some IP ratings are only valid if you've got a little shelter over it and all sorts of things. So hopefully they jump with both feet into making it easier for us as installers to fit this kit in where we should be fitting it, rather than just giving us that problem to try and come over and ultimately costing the customer more money.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Are we ending the questions there? I'm just going to read out this one. It's not a question, but JSR's just said he had a witness test from SSE. Cost £360 from a 1 hour engineer. And AJB Electrical Services has said, thanks, enjoying the podcasts. And Somerset Farmhouse, choice of drinks when attending Solar and Storage Live. We've actually got an event before that. It's been popping up on Sam's screen for the screen recording, the ESK crew at Elex Show. So if you're at Elex, come and get a drink there.
Yeah. When will this go out?
This will be out. Oh, it's out live now on Instagram.
Oh, yeah, true.
So
yeah,
it's on Instagram
course,
now.
Yeah.
But yeah, the podcast, you'll be too late. If you're watching it live on Instagram, you can do it.
We had a great time.
Yeah. If you are at Elex as well, we've got about 20 safe isolation kits to give out on the safe isolation stand. So come along, say hello. A few people at random are going to get a full safe isolation kit.
Awesome, yeah. And if you're buying, I'll have something expensive. Yeah, I think that's...
We're about done.
Yeah, if we've missed your question, then I apologise. We've got families to go to, but we'll do some more of this because I've really enjoyed this. So yeah, save them up, and you can drop them in the DMs and stuff to us, and we'll get over to you with usually a voice note on my side, because I'm a bit lazy when I'm typing. But yeah, that's great. And thanks to everybody that's joined. We weren't sure if we were just going to be chatting to each other.
An hour and a half later, we're still answering questions.
Yeah,
brilliant.
So yeah, thanks to everyone that's jumped on this, and yeah, really appreciate it. We'll get all these screen recordings put into into the podcast. This is where you take over, marking it, and and hopefully get it all put it into the podcast.
It'll work,
and it'll be out in a few weeks' time. So yeah, thanks very much to everyone that's joined, and we'll see you on the next one.
See you later.
Thanks very much.